folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's tools, tips, and talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, we continue our beginner series, and we're going to work on this knife. So let's get down to the table. I'll tell you what we're going to do today.
So today we're going to work on the profile, meaning cutting it out in the exact shape that we want. So there's some things that we want to pay attention to here. And I'm going to do everything on the grinder that I have, but I'm not going to switch it to horizontal because I'm assuming you don't have a horizontal grinder. I'm not going to use anything like a 10-inch wheel or a 4-inch wheel. I'm going to use the basic stuff that I think most people will have, which is a 2-inch wheel, because that's what's on your grinder. So let's start this out. So some of the things we need to worry about. The finger well. Since we're not going to be using a small wheel attachment, we got to figure out how to get this like that. Okay, there's some other things. This has got to go something like that. So this area here. This here, and then this scoop. And we're going to talk about each one of those because that's going to, how we do these is going to affect how easy it is to grind later. All right, so let's get into it.
And folks, even though I'm using a 2x72 grinder, everything I'm showing you here could be done on a 2x48 as well. Here you see me using the edge of the belt. That's a great way to get into some tight spaces.
Okay, I wanted to pause for a second and talk about this area, the false edge, or swedge, some people call it. So there's two types of these that you can do. I'm just going to trace this for a second. Some of them would be more like this. Okay, that's a little more pronounced. Some would be like that, termed more like a harpoon edge. This one is a lot easier to grind because this edge is straight. You can take the blade on a 45-degree bevel jig or something like that and just grind the whole thing. This one you can't because you need to move that. This is very hard to grind. Because we're doing my style of knife, I'm tempted to do the swoop here, but then I thought, let's make it easier for you guys to grind, and let's do the harpoon edge. So let's talk about the finger well and how we're going to do that. So I'm at the drill press. Why am I at the drill press? So if you don't have a small wheel attachment, one of these is a good alternative. I think you can buy these for 20 bucks or something like that, maybe 30. And this is just a drum sanding attachment for your drill press. I've got my drill press set at the fastest speed. We're going to put one of these in it. And I just made this little thing here so this will sit right in. I can slide the knife right up into it. So let's give this a shot. It's going to be much slower than using the small wheel attachment on your grinder. And you need to be kind of careful because drills are not meant for lateral pressure, so don't work it too hard. But it will work. Let's give it a shot.
So guys, you'll see that this is going really slow. We're going to go back to the grinder and use that trick of using the edge of the belt to take out most of this first. Sorry guys, I had my camera set on continuous focus for some reason during this whole session, so the focus is going to jump around.
So let's look where we're at so far. So we did the harpoon edge. We got a really nice contour on the blade here, a little bit of a recurve, so I like that. We put the finger well in. So one thing I want to show you guys, if you see here, you'll see that I've got some bumps, ripples, whatever you want to call them here. That's the enemy. We need to get those out. The easiest way to get those out is with a large wheel, but we don't have that. So what I'm going to show you guys is how to use the wheel on your platen to go after this. Next thing we need to do is the same thing. Make this a nice even curve. You can see right here it's kind of got a steeper edge than it does here. I like a nice smooth contour all the way down, so we're going to do that. We're going to do that just by rocking it on the platen. The next thing we need to do is, I kind of think the harpoon points look, any false edge looks a little funny if this is flat here. What I like to do is put a little dip here so that it looks more like I've heard someone say a shark fin. So we're going to make a little shark fin. So we're going to make this dip down a little bit and then contour our handle. So let's talk about our grinder a little bit. So on the platen, you have two perfectly good wheels, bottom and top. Even though I have aluminum wheels on these, you can still use these to grind. It's even better if you have rubber wheels on these, and some of even Broadbeck's new Morocco platen has got rubber wheels, which are even better for grinding. So it's always better when you're doing the spine, the contour of the knife, to have the belt go in the direction that you want to do, because then you can rock the blade like this. So all that's well and good, but if you're doing this by hand, you have the tendency to, I'm over accentuating, but you have the tendency to do this with the knife, and then you won't get this perfectly flat. Yes, I could flip this horizontally, but I'm assuming you don't have one that does that. So what do? Let's take our rest. If you can do this, take the rest, put it the other way. Here, I'm going to adjust this, but take the rest, put it this way, then you can lean this on the rest. In my old grinder, I built a vertical rest, so I could do this, and I didn't need my grinder to go horizontal because the rest did. So let's set it up that way, and you'll see. If you don't have a rest that can do that, maybe build one in order to get that. But if you don't, then you just have to eyeball it and try to keep it as perpendicular to the platen as you can. All right, so we leveled this out. It's nice and smooth. We leveled this out. You'll see there's no kind of bumps here, and it's always great to just run your finger over it. Make sure that's nice and smooth. Okay, the heel's good. It feels great in the hand. It's not too thick. I mean, it's a little thick here, but we'll fix that. And I really like the contour. So, now, next step. And you'll notice I did not take any of the scale off because, that's a really painful part. So I like to do the profiling first, then come back, because then you have less scale to remove. So now I'm going to take an angle grinder and I'm going to take all the scale off. You definitely want to do that before you get to your belts, because this stuff eats up belts. So let's thin this out with the angle grinder, and then I'll show you how to get this flat without a surface grinder. Now that I've hogged off a lot of material and I've got it near the thickness that I want, now we need to make this flat, because just going like this along here, this is probably not perfectly flat. So what we're going to do with that is take off the rest and move to this. We just press it up against the platen. All right, let's take a look at how we did. So we got it down to probably about 1/8 of an inch, which is right where I want it. We've got all these nice and clean. You don't want any kind of scratches or any kind of, leftovers from the last grinding going this way, because that'll be a hard one to get out later. So it's nice and smooth. You'll notice that here I still have some grind marks, but that's okay, because when we grind the bevel, all this will go away. So let's check how we did. Best thing, take a ruler with a metal edge, okay, and look at that. We're pretty good. I see a little tiny dish in the center here, if you can see that. And yeah, it's pretty good on this side. So that's what I would usually do, is take a ruler and make sure it's nice and level. It's good enough right now because we still have to heat treat this. So I think we're doing okay. Next thing, we're going to drill our holes for our pins, and we'll do some weight reduction in the handle. The reason we do that is because right now it's kind of balanced right there. But the problem is, as soon as I put scales on it, this is going to be handle heavy. So what we do is drill a bunch of holes, or there's a couple methods. You can kind of put a fuller all through here. I like to just drill holes in the handle, and that'll remove some weight, because you want it to be a bit blade heavy. And then when we add the scales, it'll balance out. Remember, we've already annealed this. I left it in the forge after I did the forging, and I let it cool down with the forge, so I know it's annealed. So let's go drill some holes. So we're ready to drill some holes, but first we need to mark out where our 2 pinholes are going to be. Okay, guys, I've said this many, many times. Do not eyeball those. Okay, measure them, because if you get them off, it's super noticeable. So I'm going to use calipers. I'm going to measure where my pins are, but before I do that, let's kind of draw in where our scales are going to be. Our scales are going to be something like that. So I like to put a pin. If you put it too close, then this is where it's going to be beveled. So I don't like my pin to be too close here. So I like to put my pin right about here and the other one about here. For these kind of knives, I don't typically put 3 pins. And here's the reason, because then you need to figure out, is this middle pin in line, or does it go with the curve of the blade? To take that out of the equation, I'll usually do 2 pins for this kind of construction. The other thing to think about, what are we going to do for scales? If you're going to do segmented scales, like this is one wood, this is another, you need to make sure you know where your pins are. Don't put your pin kind of there, because it looks odd. So we're not going to be doing segmented scales, so it doesn't matter. We're going to put our pin right about here and right about there. So what I'm going to do is just put a big mark here with the pen. Then we're going to measure it, and we'll put a punch. Now that we know where our pinholes are going to be, we're going to drill those first. You need to understand what pin stock you're going to be using here. I'm going to be using 3/16, so I'm going to drill 2 3/16 holes, and then I'm just going to drill a bunch of holes in here.
So let's talk about drilling holes. One of the first things you need is really good drill bits. I'm a big fan of these clean line drill bits. When drilling holes through steel, you want to have your drill press set up at the slowest speed you can get it. Next, you need some kind of oil or lubricant. This is to keep the drill bit cool. You don't want it heating up. Then just go slow and use lots of oil. You'll notice I've got the blade locked in a vise. Guys, this is the most important safety tip I can give you. Make sure your blade is locked in a vise, because if it helicopters, meaning the drill bit sticks and spins around, it can cut your fingers off. So make sure it is in a vise. Sometimes, as an alternative to lock in the knife in a vise, I will put a clamp on the table. This way, if it spins around, at least it's going to hit the clamp first. What you see here is a countersink drill bit, and I use this to put a little bevel on every one of the holes. That gives the epoxy somewhere to go, and it's much more effective.
So here we are. This is going to be the end of this video, guys. We've drilled all the holes. We've got our profile done. We've got the thickness right. Normally I would do the grinding of the false edge before I harden it, but in this case there's a tiny little warp, and we're going to take that out in the first normalization. So and because it's straight and it's a harpoon edge, we're going to do this on the grinder anyway, so it doesn't matter if we do it after heat treat. All right. So just to summarize, we got the profile cleaned up, we did all our holes, we've got the thickness right. It's looking pretty good. Thanks for joining me, guys. We'll see you on the next one, where we go through all of the heat treating process.